Good morning, and welcome. Well, let's talk a little bit about Magic Leap and mixed reality. So, I always start with this slide in every single talk that I give. The only reason to give a speech is to change the world. It's a reminder that I put in front of myself that it's important to actually say something important up here. So, what do I do at Magic Leap? What is a wandering wizard? That's kind of a weird game, job description. And there's me. I did all my hangouts like that on Halloween, wearing a wizard hat, and it was very strange. Roni was very upset, and very glad, very happy. But a wandering wizard goes around from office to office at Magic Leap and looks at everything that everyone's doing, looks at the big lasers and what does that do, and talks about what does mixed reality mean, and what does mixed reality mean in 2 years, when there's still lots of awesome devices, there's still phones out there and still screens out there and iPads. What does it mean in 5 years, when mixed reality is beginning to take over and mixed reality is starting to be in more places? In 10 years, when mixed reality should really be everywhere. People are often, Graeme, that's crazy. But it's not. I mean, the smartphone, the iPhone 1 came out 10 years ago, and now we all have one and we can't live without it. So 10-year revolutions are possible. We have this handy-dandy definition of mixed reality. It's actually important. Mixed reality is the mixture of the real world and virtual worlds so that one understands the other. This creates experiences that cannot possibly happen anywhere else. And that's really important because a lot of people think that mixed reality is just putting photons in front of you that aren't involved in the world. And those experiences are going to exist and they're going to be cool, but those experiences will always be better on a console or on an iPad or on a smartphone. The unique opportunity of mixed reality is to interact with the world directly. It understands and comprehends the world, lives in the world with you. And if we start to make experiences to do that, then we're onto something cool. So we have, a lot of people like mixed reality, really augmented reality. We kind of have these three realities that we talk about a lot. Virtual reality. I'm in a Viper flying on a Battlestar Galactica, and it is cool. I'm somewhere else, but I can't see my friends. Augmented reality, which has been around for a while, which doesn't understand and comprehend the world, understands where you're at and maybe the direction that you're looking, but everything that overlays on top of the world is just an overlay on top of the world. It doesn't actually interact or mix things with the world directly. Mixed reality, which does comprehend the world. There is a sensor set that understands this is a door, this is a table, these are these words in front of you. And so mixed reality can actually interact directly with the world and put things into it, onto the sofa, behind the sofa, onto the table, under the table. So mixed reality is very different than augmented reality. So I think a lot about four things, and we'll talk briefly about each of those. We'll focus on games. I think about games. I love games. I've made games all my life. I think about media. What's it like to consume Netflix? What's it like to have Netflix? Communication. What's it like to communicate with people, especially the generational differences that we have? And information. What's it like to perceive information on our device? So games. If you Googled augmented reality a year ago, you got this image, which is now very low res up there. But it's a very poor image of gaming in augmented reality. It's doing two things very badly. One, it's using a virtual D-pad. And when I was at Apple, I railed against the virtual D-pad, and game developers would say, but Graeme, the iPhone and iPad's going to fail unless you give us a joystick. And I'd say, no, you're touching the world on the other side of a piece of glass. It's going to be even more awesome. The other thing that it's doing is that it's presenting a point of view in a game which actually makes the game worse. This is just a demo. You'll never actually play this game. The game point of view on those games is quite different. But as we all know, game developers have moved on, and now there is no virtual D-pads really in touch games. We've all learned to touch the other side of the world. We do evolve. Back in the 1990s, Super Mario 64 came out. Super Mario 64 changed the game industry. We could make 3D games before Super Mario 64, but generally not on the console. Not because we couldn't, but it's because we felt that the audience, the mass audience, would not be able to comprehend three-dimensional levels. It wouldn't be able to know where the jump pads are or jump to a platform over on the other side of the screen when you couldn't see it whilst I run towards it. Up until that point, everything had been two-dimensional, showing the whole puzzle on the screen at one time. Super Mario 64 challenged that concept, made games 3D. Now I'm on the other side of a piece of glass being Mario in a 3D world. Unfortunately, game design has not really moved on since then. The worlds are much more beautiful. The graphics are much more stunning. but the world is still on the other side of a piece of glass where I play Master Chief, Lara Croft, and I'm on a Halo, or I'm in the jungle somewhere inside a tomb. The challenge of mixed reality is to move game design on again, and it's really hard because now the games happen on our side of the piece of glass, in our homes, to us directly, or at least the very cool ones will. So at Magic Leap, I often talk about a concept called Ghost Girl. This is just a concept of a game that we have, and there's my ghost Alice, and I talk about how this would actually interact with you. And so in this game, we start with wooden cubes, which are real. The wooden cubes, you're learning to play with those, and you're learning to make words, you're doing the tutorial, and you're slowly learning more and more about what it means to actually use a real-world object and have mixed reality understand what it is. But in the next room of your house, you're starting to hear noises and lights are going off, and the tutorial's continuing. And those lights and noises get louder until eventually you go and look. And there in the room, in the next room over, is a ghost, and she's standing there in front of you. And she looks directly at you, because she can, because we know where your eyes are looking. And she points directly at you, which we can do. And then she points past you, behind you. And you look behind yourself, and there on the ground is an outline of a dead body in your house. And you turn back to look at Alice, and she's gone. In your ear, you hear, "Will you help me?" And so now you're on an adventure in your own house where a ghost is helping you solve a mystery that happened to you directly. And you might remember to go back into your living room and go get the wooden cubes to start communicating with the ghost. And Alice and you slowly go on adventures together. She'll teach you things along the way, like card tricks. She'll show you how to do a magic trick with real playing cards. Here's a magic trick that you can do. So when your friends come over, they're like, "Well, how'd you learn that?" "Well, it's the ghost standing next to you, actually, that's showing me how to do it." What ghost? "Oh, Alice. She's in mixed reality." Or I'll be sitting watching Netflix on my TV and watching Stranger Things. And I look over to my side, and there's Alice hanging out with me, and she's watching Stranger Things. She says, "Well, no one really calls it the Upside Down, not anymore, and it's not really like that." But this concept they have of putting your Christmas lights up on the wall, we should go do that. You should go get the Christmas lights out of your attic. So we go to the attic, we get the Christmas lights, we put A through Z under them, and all of a sudden, we're experimenting with communicating with the other side. My friends come over, "Why have you got Christmas tree lights with A through Z under them?" "Well, I'm communicating with the other side. I'm on an adventure with Alice. I'm doing things in the real world. These are not possible on a console. These are not possible on a laptop. They're not possible on an iPad. These are things that can only happen in mixed reality." Plus, I've made you unravel all of your Christmas tree lights, which is cool. So mixed reality games will inspire and delight the audience. Media is something I think about a lot because often when people talk about mixed reality, they're like, the killer app is Netflix, the killer app is screens. And I'm like, no, Netflix is awesome already. Netflix is really cool. On my TV set, I'm about 2 seconds away from watching Stranger Things with a beer in my hand, and it's cool. But one of the other things I think about all the time in mixed reality is how can I get hero moments on my device? Hero moments because the only acceptable launch of a mixed reality device is when I wear it and people don't go, "Take that off. I should be on stage right now. If I was wearing one, you'd all go, 'This is going to be a better talk because Graham's wearing a mixed reality device.'" That's the only acceptable time that you can actually start out mixed reality devices in the world. So I think about hero moments where you can do that. This happened in the past. We had GPS units that would go out in the 80s, and you were the hero if you had a GPS unit because people knew where the road was, and people liked you. But not hero moments as well. And we have passive and active applications. A passive application is, I happen to know this thing because I'm wearing the device. An active application is, I put the device on to play Halo. And here we have an opportunity with Netflix to have a passive application. Because the other thing I do is I look up IMDb. And all of a sudden, because I have a device on, a passive application, whilst I'm watching Netflix, can tell me who that actor is, who that actress is, who the music is, what episode this is, what's the summary, what's happened before. I can go find these things out passively. And my wife's like, "Oh, that's cool. I don't mind you wearing the mixed reality device." but we're a long way from Netflix. I believe Netflix will be there. We'll have screens, which are theater screens, which are awesome, and that we want to be there, but we have to make that 10-year journey to get there. My TV set's already pretty cool. So mixed reality will be the better preferred source for media consumption. Communication is very hard. Communication, mixed reality is an avatar hanging out with me, a projection of something, Google Hangouts in front of me. But communication changes dramatically generationally. My parents, they like to talk to each other or on the phone. I like to talk on Skype and video. My daughter likes avatars in games and so forth and uses Snapchat. The generation that follows 6- and 7-year-olds has been used to pictures all their life of high photonic quality. And that's challenging because their world is very different than mine. Growing up, I used to pay for photographs twice. I used to pay for the film, and I used to pay to develop the film. And so what a system that was. And so I attach value to photographs. Even ones I take on my phone, even though they're free, they still have a bias. I still have a bias towards them because they used to cost money. My daughter doesn't. So Snapchat to her is like, it's just a moment, Dad. It just throws away. It doesn't matter the photo saved. For those 6- and 7-year-olds, they're very used to high photonic quality of thousands of pictures of themselves. And so communication for each of those generations is quite different. Avatar presence might be fine for my daughter, but the generation that follows requires a photonic presence that we can't yet do. So communication is actually a very hard problem for mixed reality that we must solve. So we want to communicate with our families via mixed reality. And I want to think about each of those generations as we do. Information is something that's, people think about in mixed reality all the time. It's the number one thing that I get when I ask people, what do you want from mixed reality? The number one thing is like, I want a person's LinkedIn profile right here. And boy, that would be cool for about half a second. Because then you know the person's name, you know what they're going to say, you know what their name is. Now you want context around the information, around the conversation. You want to have a better conversation because you are in mixed reality, and you want the other person to say, I'm going to have a better conversation with Graeme because we're in mixed reality. And here I think about the 5-mile rule. And the 5-mile rule is a rule I have about applications. The 5-mile rule is, I'm 5 miles away from my house, and I've forgotten my smartphone. Will I go home and get it? Well, yeah, I need Twitter. I need my calendar. I need to text my family. I need my email. The 5-mile rule around, now I think about the 5-mile rule for my Apple Watch. Well, no, I'm not going to go home for 5 miles. There's nothing on my Apple Watch that's really worth going home for. Well, how far away? I've locked the door to my house. No, I'm in the kitchen and my watch is upstairs. Maybe that far. It's not far enough. And we need to be talking about the 5-mile applications for mixed reality right now. We may not be making them. We may not understand them all. It may take 10 years to get there, as it did with the iPhone. But if we don't talk to what the use is actually going to be, the mixed reality will fail. The mixed reality information also has to be something where I put the device on, and no one minds that I have it on in a room or in a conversation. It has to be acceptable to wear the thing in public, to wear the thing outside, to have conversations in it. Because we want conversation to be better. People want that LinkedIn profile. If you Google augmented reality, this is what you get. This is terrible. This is crap. This is awful. This is just information on top of the world. You will use this example once. This is not a Yelp app that you will go say, oh boy, I must bring that up and see what's cool. This one's slightly better. This one's the French metro system. This one starts to show some directionality, but it's not integrated with the world. It could also be a tourist death trap, I suppose, but it's one of those. Then, of course, the best example of augmented reality right now is Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go is awesome. It places things into the world. I have the camera on, and it's cool. But do you remember the teaser trailer? When the stuff was actually in the world, when the stuff actually splashed in the water, it went behind the bridge, and it was hiding out with the plants? That's the even cooler version. And so mixed reality versions of Pokemon Go will be even better still. So with information, I will be more informed and aware of where I am and what I'm doing. This is the world that we have to kill. This world sucks. This world must die. We must destroy this. When you go to concerts, or when you go to a school play, or when you go anywhere, graduation, people all lift up their 4-inch phones, hang it over their heads, and take video of what's in front of them. And you've got to be present in those moments. You have to be present at your school play. You have to be present at a concert. You have to be present at a graduation. Watching a two-dimensional image record it is not being present. So if I can do one thing with mixed reality, it'd be to return presence to the world. I think that's vitally important. Platform is also important. This is perhaps the most important point of my talk. A mixed reality must be a separate platform. It has to be as different as television. It has to be perceived as being differently as television is from radio, as radio is from newspaper. If it's perceived as an add-on to a computer, an add-on to a console, an add-on to a mobile device, then it is not truly perceived as a separate platform. The public has to perceive it as something completely different. And as developers, we have to treat it differently. We have to use different words around it. We can't say App Store. We can't look at it as a mobile device. We all know how much mobile software costs. It can't just be an add-on to a computer. It can't just be something that depends on already existing infrastructure on computers or consoles. We need to create a compelling platform that people will line up for 4 days at Best Buy, in the rain, in the snow, and go and do that. And I think we've seen recently that if it's not a platform, it's just kind of seen as an ad, an accessory. And we need mixed reality to be something quite different. The challenge is for the game industry is that we're the only ones who can do this. Software, up until now, has been on a two-dimensional screen. Almost all of it in the world hurries up to show you something and then waits for the user, just like this PowerPoint. But in mixed reality, I'm walking around the world. I'm integral to the world. I'm moving through the world. And so those applications have to do something interesting with that as well. They have to live with me. They have to have context around me. They have to know that it is morning, or it is afternoon, or it is night, or it is, I am in a meeting, or I am shopping. They have to do interesting things. And the only industry that makes computer software that actually interacts with you constantly is games. And so those UX designers, those game designers, those programmers, the tools that we use will be the tools that will fill every vertical in mixed reality. So yes, I'm at a games conference, but I'm looking at the future of mixed reality in front of me. Thank you.